What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Eastern Current. We got a really great kayak fishing episode for you today. And as always, I always share this. Just because you're not a kayak angler doesn't mean you can't learn a ton that you can apply, whether you're fishing on foot or fishing from a boat or fishing on foot from the bank. There's just a lot of stuff that can apply across the board. And I learn so much when fishing from a kayak because it slows me down. I pick the water apart better. You're less likely to try to make big moves. You're just going to dig in where you are and try to figure it out. And there's a lot of learning that comes from that. So before we jump into the meat of the podcast, I'm going to remind you all about our Patreon page. If you do love this podcast, you can go help support us for $5 or $10 a month. Those are the two built-in tiers that we have. And then if you want to do a custom donation, you can do that as well. The other thing is our private Facebook group. If you do listen to this podcast, go over there and you can join that. And that way you can communicate and interact with other listeners and hopefully, meet and get on the water with some of those anglers on that Facebook group and kind of grow your fishing community. That's kind of the goal for that. But that's enough of me rambling. Let's bring on our guest, Dan, the frickin' fishing man. It's really just Dan the fishing man, but I had to throw the frickin' in there because I say that word way too much.
It's all good.
What's going on, man?
Good. Not too much. Just hanging out in the hotel.
Yeah, I know. I was when I was talking to Dan earlier today. He's like, "Man, anytime this evening it's fine to record. I'm just going to be sitting in a hotel room working in Georgia right now." So, what part of Georgia are you in?
We're in Bainbridge. We're actually doing survey work for Lake Seminole.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. What kind of survey work are you doing?
Just boundary work. Yep.
Right on. So tell people a little bit about you're normally a sushi chef, but with everything going on, that's you're finding work elsewhere right now.
Yeah, I am. I'm a sushi chef full time in Crestview, Florida. But right now they've got the restaurant shut down, as most restaurants are across the United States. So yeah. I'm kind of out of work, just doing some side stuff here. Right on. Yeah, from the Panhandle, Emerald Coast.
So that's the area I've spent the least amount of time fishing in Florida is up in the Panhandle area, and it's where I'd really like to spend some more time. I'd drive past so much good fishing to get down to the Everglades and the Upper Keys, and I fished a little bit in Jupiter, and I fished in like the Mosquito Lagoon and Indian River and some of that, but I want to fish the Crystal Coast for sure. So
some good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's start out. I like to do each show. Just kind of give us your background story. How'd you get into fishing? Where did you grow up? And how'd you get to become Dan the Fishing Man?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Crestview, Florida. Lived there my whole life until I went to college, but I really got into fishing at a young age. My dad would take us out on the river catching bass and brim and catfish, anything like that. He kind of stayed away from saltwater. He wasn't a big fan of saltwater. We did do some mullet fishing, early teens, but no, mostly all freshwater and deer hunting. So I had a love for the outdoors from an early age. Moved off to college, didn't really do any fishing while I was in college or anything outdoorsy. And when I moved back to Florida, I decided, hey, it's been long enough. I've lived in Florida my whole life and I haven't done saltwater fishing. So yeah. I just started saltwater fishing, and really fell in love with it. The first day I ever went saltwater fishing, took my kayak. I'd been kayak fishing for like 2 years doing bass stuff, and then took my kayak out one day to the bay, caught a limit of trout, and was hooked immediately.
That's sweet, man. That's super cool. It's definitely, I feel like that's so many people's stories, and it's mine too, starting in freshwater, and I was around saltwater, but that, I guess it's less intimidating maybe, and I don't know, there's definitely a little bit more of a learning curve to go out and catch trout and redfish than there is to go out and, catch a bass or two.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people get started. And the other big thing is, if you don't grow up on the coast, like there's so much more accessibility to freshwater fishing, from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. All over the country,
tiny.
You got lakes and rivers that you can catch bass or all the freshwater species out of.
Yeah,
there's only so much coastline.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I was talking. This was Siegler reels. They make fly reels and conventional reels. I was recording a podcast with them last week. That's not out yet, and they were telling me that the obvious one is bass fishing. That's like the largest. It draws the most money per year. Is bass fishing. Anything to do with bass fishing. The second largest. Let me hear what's your guess on like the second largest as far as profit for a single fish?
I'm not sure. Maybe tarpon.
Tarpon is a great guess because they are expensive fish, but it's catfish, man. Catfish are the second. And then when I broke it down, it was like, all right, that's the most, like within 10 minutes of anyone's house, they can probably go catch a catfish or a bass. And so that's probably that was my thought. That's probably why.
Yeah,
those two
that makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's cool that you grew up around the salt and you came back to it. So.
Oh yeah, and I've been in love with it ever since.
Yeah.
Can't stop.
Yeah, it's definitely an addiction for sure.
Definitely is.
And the kayak fishing, man, it's just a whole nother element to it where you're even closer to the element. Like you're closer to the water, the fish are. It's almost like the playing field's evened a little bit.
Oh, it definitely is. Coming out of growing up fishing in a john boat on the river and on lakes and stuff, I never really dealt with kayaks except for maybe a stream trip or a float trip or something. But when I moved back to Florida after I stopped going to college, I didn't have any money, so a kayak that was $200 on the side of the road was my answer to getting on the water and getting outdoors. So after that, fell in love with it. Made first big kayak purchase I got a Diablo Amigo, which was the wrong kayak for saltwater, and I learned that the hard way. But then moved up to a couple different ones. It is if you've never heard of it, it's basically a river kayak,
Gotcha.
A shallow river, super shallow boat that's super wide, super stable, made for specifically for fly fishing.
Oh, cool! Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sweet. Well, take us kind of through your passion for fishing down there. You said a lot of the times when we were talking pre-show, you're in 2 feet to 6 inches of water trying to sight fish is the main thing. So take me through kind of your passion and what you're doing down there when it comes to fishing.
I'll tell you what, my passion is redfish. Realistically, any way I can get them, but my favorite thing is sight fishing. Thankfully over here, if you've never been to the Emerald Coast or anything like that, we have crystal clear waters probably 80% of the year, except for in the winter. But, we get crystal clear waters all throughout the year, and it's a really great sight fishing area. But other than that, we've got a great fishery over here. We've got a bridge called the 3 Mile Bridge that holds bull reds all night long. You can have 20 fish nights out there throwing top water in 40 feet of water. Yeah, it's insane. But we just have a fantastic fishery for redfish. They are big and healthy.
That's awesome. So that bull red fishery there, is that a year-round thing or is that a seasonal?
Oh yeah.
Wow,
oh yeah.
That's cool.
Any time of the year. You can go. I could go out there tomorrow night and catch them all night long.
That's sweet. That's a nice little back pocket spot to have.
It is. It really is. It really is.
Yeah, that's neat. So the shallow water fishing, and I've never fished there, so some of these questions might sound kind of dumb, but when you're kayak fishing there, like what are you looking for? Well, first off, let's talk about accessibility on a kayak down there. Is it tough for you to get to good fishing water, or is there a lot of good accessibility? Or do you have to be creative?
not at all. Thankfully, here there's an abundance of boat launches all up and down all the areas that are available to fish saltwater. You got roads that just dump right into the water that even if they don't have a boat launch, it's not anybody's property except the county, so you can launch your kayak like that.
Nice.
Into little creeks and stuff. But the kayak community around here is fairly large. We actually have a couple launches spotted across the Emerald Coast that have like kayak specific launches. So you pull your truck up, slide it down. It's really nice. There's a bunch of local shops here that do kayaks. There's a kayak tournament association that's run 30 minutes down the road from where I live. That it is the Gulf Coast Kayak Fishing Association. A buddy of mine, Louis, runs that, and it's always good. They have tournaments every month, so there's kayak fishing around here is really big.
Right on. Is that something you compete in a little bit?
I do. I try.
The tournament fishing, man, it's a whole nother level. Like I didn't realize how I wanted to be competitive at fishing. Like I was like, I'll fish in tournaments the first time I ever did, and it's like it lights this whole new fire under your butt, and that push for the day is pretty fun.
It really does. I've always been sort of competitive, so any hobby that I've been involved in, I always wanted to get into competitive side of that hobby. By no means am I any good. I have 2-3 wins under my belt, and those are all bull red tournaments at the bridge. So
heck yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So, as a kayak angler, what are some of the principles that you kind of put into place as far as, spots that you're looking for and how you're fishing to be productive? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, definitely. You really got to pick your spot depending on the wind. So you don't have the luxury of just pulling up anchor and running to a different spot that's 5-10 miles down the road that's got different wind coverage. So the first thing I look for is wind coverage, and what your wind direction is going to be looking like. Besides that, somewhere that you can get to easily. You don't really want a long paddle to your spot. Especially if you're newer. You got that 2-hour paddle to your spot. You're going to fish all day, and then you got to make that paddle back. So I like fishing really close to the launches. Anywhere that I go is going to be no more than a mile from the launch that I launch at in the morning.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend in a lot of kayak anglers I've talked to. And even so, like, you seem lucky you've got a bunch of launches, but a lot of the guys that don't, like, the cool thing about a kayak is you can get pretty creative about a launch, and especially with the wheels you can put on them and stuff. Do you ever have to do that, or like you were saying, pretty much?
Yeah, actually, my number one spot that I go to for summer and spring fishing is a combat launch, and it's just dump it into a creek off the road, and then you're good to go. But yeah, we've done that all up and down South Louisiana fishing IFA tournaments. They don't have a specific launch that you have to launch at, so you'll find something that looks good on Google Maps, and then the only access is a little roadside ditch that you can pedal out to.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
You got to get creative.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that attracts me to kayak fishing, and it would be more of a play in freshwater fishing, ponds and lakes and stuff like that. But still the same in saltwater is just being able to be creative about where you're fishing and get to an area that maybe you'd have to run way around or might be landlocked. And I did some really cool kayak fishing with a buddy. He's got actually a big YouTuber kayaker. His name's Elias Ski Fishing. I don't know if you've ever seen him on YouTube.
I have. I do enjoy his videos.
Yeah, he's got some cool videos. He took me this winter to this landlocked pond that had huge striper in it. Off of a river that had flooded, but we had to drag the kayaks through a gate, like a hole cut in this fence, and launch them in this pond. And I was like, you can never do it on a boat, and you couldn't have ever caught those fish, from the bank. So it's just it's a cool way to access water that you can't typically access anywhere else.
Oh, definitely. My best friend and fishing partner, he always makes the joke that my favorite fishing spot is the one that's closest to the no trespassing sign.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. I like that a lot. Well, what are you looking for down there? Like, what is good redfish habitat? What are the things you're looking for in a spot?
For me, I'm looking for grass lines and potholes and sand. We have the Emerald Coast Sound is where I do a majority of my fishing, and on the north side of the sound you got fantastic grass flats that have fantastic grass lines and everything like that, and then on the south side of the sound you've got sand flats with grass patches.
Gotcha.
So if you're really looking to sight fish, the south side is always one of my favorite spots to go, but if early morning topwater fishing, then you can't beat the north side. But yeah, just shallow water potholes, basically anything you'd look for when you're looking for redfish: potholes, grass lines, and depth changes. Yeah,
that's cool. It's funny too. Like, I've done a bunch of red fishing in Florida, so that makes sense to me. But it's just crazy how versatile these fish are and how different of habitats they'll live in. Like, you get up in North Carolina, and potholes aren't even a thing. Like and it's same with Louisiana. You don't have potholes. You just have mud banks and. So to me, redfish, out of all the flats fish, are the most versatile, can live in the largest, difference of water temperatures, and you could catch one, up in a river that's holding on a tree like a bass, and you could catch one that's tailing on a turtle grass flat down in the Keys,
Oh yeah.
Which is what's so cool about them.
It's crazy, around here we get a lot because you can catch redfish on the beach, you can catch redfish inshore, you can catch redfish in the river mouths and all that good stuff. But it's just crazy how different they can, different places they can be at. For sure. Do you spend time doing anything else besides the red fishing there? I mean, I like to do some offshore fishing. I haven't got too into it. My work schedule didn't really allow me to go with anybody last year. Yeah. But this year I'd like to do a lot more offshore fishing as soon as the beaches are good and open back up. Yeah, for sure. It's I've got some killer fish. It's about to be tarpon time here. Yeah, so that's what was my next question. Do y'all get migratory tarpon, big migratory tarpon there? Sweet. We do. Springtime, the tarpon run through really, really well. Have you had much luck in the kayak on them? I have not. I have only actually been out there 1 or 2 times to target them, but there are a bunch of guys out here. I don't know if you've ever heard of a gentleman, Brandon Barton. He's one of the Hobie guys, a buddy of mine, and he slays the tarpon.
That's awesome.
Slaughters the tarpon.
That's awesome.
But I would love to get one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it sounds like you need to hang out with Brandon and learn the ropes from him a little bit if he's catching like that. I mean, so is it like is it a spot there that is where you're mostly getting your tarpon, or
not necessarily?
There are a lot of
realistically, spots. When they're running, it's all up and down.
Yeah.
From Destin to Pensacola.
Gotcha. That's awesome. There's a lot of Apalachicola. I know that like the fly fishing scene is pretty large there for the tarpon.
It is big.
And Pensacola as well, and that's an area I've always wanted to come. I do a lot of that's kind of my main focus is fly fishing.
Yeah, and in the summer when they are running, like early summer, late spring, they do get around. The bridge I was talking about earlier is called the 3 Mile Bridge.
Yeah,
and that is a big spot for kayak anglers to catch tarpon.
Yeah,
at night.
They love, fish love those big mega structures. Like anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
That's one thing that I need to stress more on this podcast is as far as, fishing spots, as we talk about so many things. But look on your Google Earth, or look on Google Earth and like in your area and look for those mega structures. Those big bridges, huge shipping docks, stuff like that. Those are always going to hold fish.
Oil rigs or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. So one thing you talked about before the show that was really interesting to me was I was like, what kind of stands out about you as an angler? And you're like, man, I'm just super simple. I like to be super simple in the water with what I take and how I fish. So dive into that a little bit and kind of explain that to everybody that's listening.
For me, it's super simple. I like fishing a kayak. I've owned a couple different boats and always ended up selling them because it's just too much of a hassle. But quickly load the kayak in the truck. I'm taking 1 or 2 rods, most of the time 2 rods, unless it's the winter, and then I'm only taking 1. And then 1 single bag of tackle and a box of hooks. And for me, that's all it is. I throw a jig and I throw a topwater.
Right on.
And most of the time, I can at least get something to go home and eat.
Yeah, for sure. Do you do any sight fishing with a topwater, or is it mostly that's a search bait for you?
Mostly it's a search bait.
Gotcha.
Around here, they're not as sight fishing them with topwater is a little more difficult
than it would
be in, say, a marsh setting. Now in Louisiana, when you're fishing tournaments, that's fantastic to throw a topwater for tailors, but around here it's mostly you're throwing jigs, shrimp imitations. The Savage Gear shrimp is one that's really, really popular around here because the water's so clear, so you have to be lifelike.
Yeah, definitely. What topwaters do you like when you're throwing topwater?
I like a Super Spook Junior, and if you can find one, what is it called? The Bonnie 95 from Jackal, but they don't sell them in the U.S. anymore, so you have to order from Japan.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm not even familiar with the color. What's the color breakdown?
The Jackal, I forgot what color that I use, but it basically looks like a mullet. Gotcha. It's got a kind of dark back with a silver whitish bottom. But the thing about that one is it's a bass bait.
Okay.
It's small. It's really small. And around here, in the summertime when the topwater's hot, you're looking at, they're eating the redfish and trout are looking for glass minnows and small little 2-3 inch bait fish. They're not looking for big pinfish or mullet. So you throw that smaller topwater in the summer and the bigger topwater in the cooler months around here.
That's cool.
Is what I've had the success with. Sadly, I sacrificed my Bonnie 95 last year to a bull red that broke me off.
Oh, man. It sounds like, so you said you have to order from Japan. Is that something you can find through? Have you looked through AliExpress and all that for tackle?
I have not. The ones I've ordered, I've only ordered 2, but they've been from eBay.
From eBay, right on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a resource, man, I've started tapping into lately. And a lot of times you have to change your hardware when you get it. But, for casting jigs, I do a lot of albie and bonita fishing, throwing those on the surface. That's pretty popular around here. And you're going to go to the tackle shop and pay $7 to $9 for a casting jig that you're probably going to get bit off on eventually. Mm-hmm. And you can go get the same one or similar one on AliExpress for 75 cents. So
dang.
And same with tons of top waters, crankbaits, wake baits, soft plastics.
Yeah,
There's
I've
tons
heard
of
it. I've heard of AliExpress, but I've never actually used it.
Yeah, I shouldn't say that. I got a bunch of friends that work in tackle shops, but
yeah,
it is a good resource.
I'm a real, and simplistic goes throughout, most of the lifestyle that I like to live. So I like to shop local and pay cash for things. So I don't necessarily order a lot of things online, and I don't necessarily like to. We've got some really good tackle shops around here that really have good quality gear at good pricing.
Definitely.
So
that's huge.
I'm thankful for that. So.
That's huge. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't get me wrong. I spend plenty of money at our local tackle shops.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that are nice if you can get a bulk deal on some cheaper stuff. It just it helps as a guide for me. Not spend quite as much money. So
if I was a guide, I'd probably definitely buy bulk.
Yeah. It's it can be helpful. So well, let's talk a little bit too. You were mentioning the Ned rig and how you like to fish the Ned rig for redfish. Is that a sight fishing bait predominantly for you? Are you blind casting that as well?
No, I all the time.
Okay, sweet. Well, let's definitely dive into that because that's a bait that is really starting to blow up in the saltwater world.
And it really is around here too. We had I saw it on a Facebook post probably last November, and I went and picked up a pack and instantly loved them.
Yeah.
Just I used the ticklers, the TRD ticklers.
Yep.
Those work great. And there's a local gentleman around here, Nicholas Little, from Navarre, who has a bait company that makes a ghost shrimp colored Ned rig plastic, and I buy those too. Okay. Those are fantastic because ghost shrimp are a big thing around here.
Yeah. The ghost shrimp, that's a really, really clear shrimp, correct? That's why it's got the name. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So that bait's a very translucent looking bait.
Yeah, it's like a translucent, like yellowish, kind of opaque deal. It works really well. But yeah, sight fishing, just casting around, follow up bait, of course, for your top water. It works in all different ways.
Yeah, I think what's cool about it too is the fact, especially when you're fishing grass or something like that a Ned rig stands straight up. I think that's one of the best parts about it. And that's one of the cool things I like about Z-Man in general. Like even if you're not fishing a Ned rig, the Z-Man baits, the fact that they float
straight up.
Yeah, you can let it sit and move it very little and still get good action on it. So
I got turned on to Z-Man last year when I was down in Mosquito Lagoon, actually.
Oh, cool.
I had been a big fan of gulp baits, since I've only been saltwater fishing probably 4 years. So gulp was what I used the first 2 years because it caught fish.
Yeah.
And then when you get a little more confident, you switch to something that's a little cheaper.
A little cheaper, and you realize they'll eat. The gulp's really just a stick. I mean, it doesn't have any action. It's really just the scent. But it does show you that it really becomes, in sight fishing, presentation. Like if you move something in front of them and present it to where they feel like they found it and it looks somewhat like it could be alive, a lot of times the redfish is going to eat it. In my opinion.
Presentation and your tackle selection, because I've really had to, over the last year, I've really downsized my leader. I was strictly 20-pound test all the way through sight fishing, anything. And lately I've been noticing that they've been a little spookier, so I dropped down to 10-pound test line, and making sure your cast is perfect, your knot's perfect. It's a whole game down here with the clarity of water that we get.
Yeah. So what's your go-to as far as like, all right, you see a fish, how far do you like to lead it? How far do you like to cross its path when you're fishing from a kayak?
Oh, just depends on the situation that I'm given.
That's a good answer.
if it's a little windy and you can't really see too far ahead of you, you might have to just drop it in their face. But normally, you like to get it out in front of them at least a fish length.
Yeah.
And just sit it there. When they come up on it, give it a little jiggle, and normally they eat it. I like those ticklers because they got those 4 little tails that just wiggle with the water, and you don't even have to move it. That fish just goes crazy for it.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of those baits, man, is the fact that they really do nothing baits. If you put it in the right spot, it's going to get eaten. So you might as well have just thrown a piece of cut shrimp there, and they'll turn around and eat it. So. Well, I think the last thing I really want to get into, it's crazy how quickly time goes by, and we'll talk a little bit more for sure, but sight fishing from a kayak, what are some tips that you have for people that want to try sight fishing from a kayak?
Man, my one big thing that I learned is if you have a push pole, stakeout pole, use that instead of a paddle. The paddle going through the water and it dripping off the water is a real big thing for me. I'm getting real close, catching fish within 10 feet of me most of the time. So stealth is a big deal. If you can, I got the sea deck mats on my kayak for quietness. That's a big deal. Just being quiet, getting low, making that cast. You want to give the fish every opportunity not to see you or your tackle is my big thing. And so the right line, the right cast. But besides that, you're just going to hope that fish is hungry when you put a bait in front of it.
Yeah, definitely. And usually they are. They're
usually not one to turn down food. And I've really been using a lot of Procure lately.
Yeah.
That stuff has been a game changer as far as moving from, if you're used to using a gulp bait as compared to another soft plastic that's not got an infused scent, that stuff is killer.
Yeah, you get those certain redfish that it doesn't matter if it smelled like, dog crap. They're just going to eat it because it moved in front of them. But those ones that kind of come over and check it out slowly, that scent, man, it seals the deal.
Oh, it does.
I've got a bunch of fly clients that are like, snobby, persnickety. They don't want to. They just want to throw the feathers to the fish and get the fish to eat. And sometimes, like this time of year, we're getting out of it. But winter, you get real spooky, temperamental schools. Fish and
where are you located at again?
I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, so the North Carolina coast.
Okay, yeah.
So big schools of redfish, kind of in deeper sloughs in the marsh in the winter. And I'll be like, hey, let me check that fly. I'm going to trim it down a little bit, and I'll reach down on my hatch and squirt a little Procure on the tail of it, rub it in, and all right, try it again.
Definitely. Yeah, I just got into. I'm trying to get into fly fishing. I caught my first fly redfish. Probably 3 months ago.
Nice. Heck yeah.
But it's hard.
It's a hard game.
Especially from a kayak.
Yeah, man. There's so many moving pieces in a kayak. That's what I was going to ask, too. When you get onto a flat to sight fish from your kayak, are you kind of drifting, staking out, looking in that area for a little bit, drifting, staking out? Or are you just kind of drifting the whole flat?
No, I'm constantly moving. I cover as much ground as I can, especially since I got the pedal kayak.
Yeah.
Because there's no real consequences for going too far.
Yeah. Is in your area, is there the ability to sight fish from the seat, or do you pretty much have to stand up and sight fish?
You definitely have to stand up.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah. The tailing is few and far between, sadly.
Yeah.
And you're fishing in such shallow water sometimes that there's no way you see them in time if you're in the seat.
Yeah, you got to have that angle. It's important. That's cool. The other thing I want to talk about was, what was it? We were talking about the sight fishing. Oh, so if you're not sight fishing, if you're fishing that area and you're not sight fishing, say it's, or you're in an area, or if you're not sight fishing, what kind of stuff are you looking to target fishing?
Normally 1 to 3 feet, 3 foot water. So I move a little deeper. You're just looking for those changes in the grass. So it'll be massive expanses of grass flats. You're looking for potholes, breaks, depth changes, anything. Just fan casting as much as possible. Gotcha.
Well, sweet, man. Well, for kayak anglers that want to get into the red fishing and the sight fishing and stuff, is there any last tips or tricks or just encouragement that you want to leave anybody with?
Yeah, if you're really wanting to get into sight fishing, make sure you got a stable kayak that you can stand up in. There's no point in even trying it in something that you can't, because you won't be successful. But really, patience is key. You're going to get, or at least here, I get turned down more by the fish than I do get eat. So, just keep going at it, and really pay attention to how the fish looks at your bait and reacts to it. So, you'll get some fish that are just instantly spooked. You'll get some fish that are curious. Learn from the mistakes that you made on your last cast to put the next cast in the position that you think is going to be best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge, man. That's a good point.
Patience is the biggest thing with sight fishing.
Definitely. You learn from your mistakes as well as your successes when it comes to sight fishing, and with anything.
Yeah.
And don't be discouraged. Cover water well, like you said. Always be moving. Don't go to an area and try to make that area work if it's not working. Keep moving. Yeah. Look for that productive water. Well, cool, man. Like I said earlier, every time I have a kayak podcast, I'm like, golly, I want to get a kayak. So,
hey, man, it's a great investment if you can do it.
It is.
But, if you're used to boat fishing, like you were saying earlier, I have buddies who take me out on their boats and such, and I never do as good on a boat as I do on a kayak.
Right.
I can outfish myself 10-1 on a kayak compared to a boat, because what you were saying earlier is you're really having to slow down. You don't have that motor to move. You don't have that trolling motor to move, especially if you're in a paddle kayak. You're really limited in a paddle kayak compared to a pedal one. But you really have to break down areas, because the fish can be, you got a 150-foot stretch of flats. They could not be biting in that, but the next 150-foot stretch they can. Sometimes in a boat you blow through that, and when you're in a kayak you're really dialing in that area.
Definitely. And I think the other big part that you just reminded me of when you're saying that is with a pedal kayak, not a paddle but a pedal. You've got your rod in your hand the whole day. You're fishing the whole day. I mean, you can always cast. So
I was a big believer in the paddle kayaks until I started fishing one of my buddy's Hobies for tournaments, and it is a night and day difference. And you can win tournaments and you can win some money with a paddle kayak, but you have a way better chance to win it in a pedal kayak if that's what you're going for. And just overall ease of use and all that, especially windy days, it opens up a whole different world, current, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, sweet, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate being
if you're ever doing some survey work up in the North Carolina coast area, hopefully not. Hopefully you're back to sushi soon.
I hope so. But yeah, same thing goes for you, man. If you're ever down, I got extra kayaks. So
sweet. I'll definitely
let me know.
I'll definitely hit you up, and I might be down there later on this summer coming through, so I'll keep you posted.
Heck yeah. But definitely do it. We'll go out to the bridge and get you on some bowls.
Cool. I like it, man. Well, Dan Bowers, you guys, is his name, and Dan the Fishing Man 1 on Instagram if you want to keep up with his fishing adventures.
Somebody else took Dan the Fishing Man. He doesn't even post anything, so I was a little butthurt about that.
Have you messaged him and been like, hey, man, do you mind if I have your Instagram name?
No, it's just a thing now. So
yeah.
You're
Dan the Fishing Man number 1. You're the best.
I'm the number 1 Dan the Fishing Man.
Yeah, I like it. Well, sweet. Well, I'm going to close this out here. Guys, thanks again so much for checking out the show. If you liked it, just keep checking them out. And like I said, go check out Dan the Fishing Man 1 on Instagram. And if you're in his area, what restaurant are you a sushi chef at? Chef.
Bamboo Sushi and Hibachi in Crestview.
Nice. If you're in Crestview, check him out. Go get some sushi. So
yeah,
we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you again. Later.